the reality is the data is out there and being used. And I think that it's up to us as technologists to be transparent about the way that we're doing it, because I think it is almost a negotiation with society, right? What is fair, what is just, and what's reasonable is a social contract that we're all held to.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work. Thanks again for making this one of the most downloaded podcasts about the future of work. If you enjoy what we do, please like, comment, and share in your favorite podcast app. And we'll keep sharing great conversations like the one we have for today. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. I'm also an investor in and advisor to more than 30 AI-first companies, and as you know, a firm believer in the power of technology to make humans better. If you're passionate about changing the world with AI, or just looking for your next adventure, let's talk. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly on this show, and of course, the added bonus is you get one AI fun fact each week. Here it is for today. SM Erdem and Vera Sidlova from Kantar, a digital consulting company, this week analyzed the effectiveness of AI-generated ads. They evaluated whether AI-generated ads are just easier to create, or they're also better. Their conclusion is that AI-generated ads perform well when evaluated based on long-term brand value versus human-generated ones. They also found that the best-performing ads involved the fusion of human-written scripts with machine-generated images. It's a well-written, data-driven article that goes beyond kind of the typical fear-mongering we hear related to AI eliminating creative jobs. And it's certainly one that's relevant to today's conversation, which we will shift to now. AI is here to accelerate the world's creativity. In fact, it's one of the things generative AI does best. Imagine a world where personalized campaigns help products we love find you. Today's guest did just that, and he created Evolv AI to help brands connect with customers across all digital channels. Tyler Foster is the CTO of Evolv AI, a platform that helps brands improve conversion and experiment faster. He started the company with CEO Michael Scharff in 2019, and together they've grown it into an early leader in AI-first digital experimentation, having helped brands like Safelite, DirectTV, and Verizon. Prior to Evolv AI, Tyler was the founding CEO and chief architect of Senient Systems and an early software engineer at Cloudera. And without further ado, Tyler, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the podcast. Let's get started by having you share a bit more about your background and how you got into this space.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah. Sorry, quick correction. I was the founding CEO of Senient, but I didn't found Sentient. So, my background is pretty diverse, I would say. Interesting early start growing up in a small town in southern Utah that was very rural and agricultural, but my father was a software engineer in the early days at Motorola, building operating systems and assemblers primarily. And he ended up homeschooling me through a lot of my education. And so that was really my first start with technology, was going home and working in technology and then going out and playing in the dirt. So it was an interesting start, but from there I really moved towards more towards kind of AI and an early anime geek, and just loved the idea of the ways that computers could potentially think. And so it was a really early passion for me. From there, I moved to Seattle to actually go to school to become a professional scuba diver. But the water was cold and dark, and I was coding on the side for one of the early electronic medical record companies, and just really enjoyed the problem that presented. And I've always been really into solving real problems. So shifted more towards technology and gave up my dreams of being a professional scuba diver. So, I've over the last 23 years, I've worked in a lot of different areas of technology, early CAD systems, with dynamic thresholding, image cleanup, segmentation. Did some time at Intel, built front end platforms and e-learning technology. And then I ended up at Cloudera, which was really, I think, a pretty formative place for me. So working alongside some really brilliant people in the Hadoop ecosystem, working on heterogeneous data management at scale, building really interesting systems that people were using to solve some pretty compelling problems. But one thing that we just kept on seeing there was the challenges that people faced with getting value out of huge amounts of data. And so at at that point, there was starting to become this real shift towards data science, and the compute power really reached a point where we could do real AI at scale. So we had done some interesting stuff in data science and in kind of niche use cases, but that was the point where we had both the data sufficient and compute sufficient to get real value out of AI and machine learning. And that watching that sort of start to develop there was an exciting time. From there, we moved towards giving people real genuine access to that information, but it was still very early days. It was a pretty specialist role with a lot of heavy work to get real value. Since then, we've seen a real explosion as in the way that humans do. We've abstracted away these problems. We've tuned implementations. We've developed some amazing libraries and algorithms that can be used, to some extent off the shelf to solve really compelling problems. From there, I went towards kind of deeper into the distributed computing space with a company called Senient, and then I joined an AI research firm called Sentient Technologies, where we were working on the application of AI to the problem of user experience. So we had an early research project there in POC that was kind of the previous form of Evolv AI. It was really compelling, interesting results, but really early stage. And the board there asked us to spin it out and create a company out of it, because they felt that it had real legs. So exciting opportunity for Michael and myself to make this into something that could really have impact at scale. So that's really what brought me to Evolv. And so for the last 4 years, 5 years, we've been working on getting the real scalable solution in place, getting some pretty exciting customers in place to take advantage of it, and really excited about what comes next.
We've learned a lot over the years on this show about how AI is being used in retail contexts. Conversation I remember that I really enjoyed was with Diane Kang, who's the founder and CEO of a company called Brainify. I knew you and Evolv AI have kind of grown up around this space of applying AI to retail. I'd love to get your perspective as a technologist on some use cases, how it's being used to improve the consumer experience, and kind of where a typical engagement starts for Evolv AI.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so looking at AI broadly, as it applies to retail, it really started in areas like forecasting and inventory management, recommendation systems, sentiment analysis, that sort of stuff, and really kind of focused towards the digital world. Over time, we've seen that get better and better. And now you're starting to see it being used for more like adaptive experiences and stuff like we're doing, intelligent digital experiences that adapt and respond to real user behavior. Some of the interesting spaces that I'm watching that I think are pretty exciting is around previously it was primarily applied to the digital side of retail, but now it's starting to work in the interface between digital and physical or brick and mortar. So, some of the interesting stuff going on with Sephora. Sephora has some cool AI tools for helping you figure out what's the right color for you, what's the right makeup or skincare products. Getting the shopping assistance in store. Macy's is a good example of that, where you can pull up the Macy's app and they'll help you find what you need. Um, Tools like the cart trackers or self checkout capabilities. Amazon Go was an early prototype of that, but you're starting to see those sorts of technologies more. And then getting into kind of sentiment analysis and taste analysis for the individuals, where you can see companies starting to offer to scan your Pinterest board and help you connect that with furniture, or helping to kind of scan your facial responses to clothes as you're looking at images and styles to understand what you have affinity towards, or your skin texture and color to help you understand what the best skincare routine is. So it started out kind of simple and broad, but it's gotten to very kind of specific use cases that I think are adding a ton of value in people's lives and helping them connect with the products that they'll love, and cut through the noise of the modern kind of retail experience, where there's sort of product or offering overload.
Those are amazing use cases. And I believe that the way we interact with brands as consumers is going to change dramatically over the next couple of years. But the flip side of that is, in order to make these hyper-personalized automated decisions, these brands need to be collecting massive amounts of data about us as consumers. As a technologist, what do you think is our responsibility as vendors using this consumer data to make decisions, to be transparent and responsible with our use of the data we collect?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the realities of the modern world is that it's pretty quantified. There's tons of data being collected all the time, so much so that it's not, a lot of it isn't even particularly useful. And so I think that when we're thinking about privacy in the modern world, it's an interesting kind of dichotomy, right? We want the benefits uh of of you know the being connected with the information that we want, being able to find the products that we need, but at the same time we don't want it to be used to exploit us or manipulate us into doing something that we wouldn't choose to otherwise. So I think that society is pretty good about holding companies responsible for misuse of the powerful tool that is data. But at the end of the day, there's data that exists, whether it's the CCTV cameras that you walk by, or the processing of your social network and all of that stuff. So I think the reality is the data is out there and being used, and I think that it's up to us as technologists to be transparent about the way that we're doing it, because I think it is almost a negotiation with society, right? What is fair, what is just, and what's reasonable is a social contract that we're all held to.
We had a great guest on recently named Meredith Broussard, who's a professor, and she wrote a book called More Than a Glitch about kind of algorithmic accountability. And one of the stories she tells is about the racist soap dispenser. And it turns out, a certain vendor of soap dispenser trained its sensor models on data that was mostly, non-dark skinned people. And so when a dark skinned person put their hands under it, it wouldn't dispense soap. I'm curious to know, as the CTO of the company, and kind of, you drive the vision for the technology, are there any specific examples of where you've come across a situation where you feel like there may be some ethical principles at risk, or you've had to kind of coach the team about, what could go wrong, if the data is misused?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always that that fine line between being helpful and being, you know, being disruptive to somebody's workflow. And I think that when it comes to training data, it's important to think about, especially when thinking about adaptive experiences. One of the things that I think is most powerful about it is accessibility, right? How do we achieve, really truly accessible experiences that, as they're adopted more broadly across society, are able to solve for, the differences between the ways that we think and learn and interact. Um, and so making sure that your training data is always representative of um, society as a whole. I think oftentimes when you look at quantitative analysis, you end up really processing for the average. And so staying aware of that that diversity aspect, that accessibility aspect is something that's super important to us as an organization, and to me personally in my life.
So now think about yourself as a consumer, like in a mall or wherever ads are being targeted at you. What do you think your rights should be in terms of when a recommendation is made for you that's inappropriate, or when you feel like you don't want to be targeted? What are your rights as a consumer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple of aspects to that. So one is, you know, what are the data sources, or how are they pulling data about me specifically, right? I think oftentimes if you look at sort of the traditional data sets, you end up with really, demographic, psychographic, where you're trying to segment and categorize people into to pretty broad groups. And I think that process tends to ignore the detail of a person and their current situation. And usually the more important information for connecting a user with the right product is their current need, their current behavior. So like if you are, you walk into a retail store and you're looking around and kind of wandering around, there's probably a retail worker there that can connect with you and help you find the product that you're looking for, um, or the answer that you're looking for, right? And it's based not on your demographic profile, not on, you know, the fact that you were just on Facebook, right? It's about your behavior and kind of like your demonstration of a need. And so I think that companies need to really focus more on connecting with you in the moment, as opposed to over classifying you and then trying to treat you a certain way over time based on that. So there's the responsibility of the organizations, and then from a consumer perspective, I think the best thing, the best option you have is to vote with your wallet, right? So as companies roll out these things, they're testing to see, does this improve customer experience, does this improve outcomes? And if you let them know that it's making you uncomfortable, or you choose not to shop at that location anymore, you'll see that companies will again kind of respond to that social contract pretty fast if they see that it's having a negative impact.
Now, as we're recording this, there are a lot of strikes going on in Hollywood, and where a lot of the creative community is concerned about AI taking jobs, royalty payments, various things where they feel like they're getting boxed out by AI and automation. What's your pitch to the creative community that is concerned that companies like Evolv AI may ultimately replace the creative pursuit?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that that's both a reasonable question and pretty far from where we are, right? So I think in the grand scheme of things, humanity will create better and better tools to to achieve their goals, right? And AI is just another tool, another technology to improve lives. here at Evolv, we're really focused on not taking humans out of the loop, right? Humans play a key role in creativity and the motivation that drives the machine, and then also on the curation, right? So a lot of art is in the edit, and so for us, we're looking at building tools that amplify human creativity, that help people with big ideas get get achieve the goals that they set out to achieve that they couldn't otherwise, right? That they don't have access to the knowledge or the technical capability to be able to operate all of the different kind of tools that are available in the market today to solve the specific kind of small problems that build to the big outcome. And so I think that the closer we can connect humanity's ideas to the outcome that they're seeking, and reduce as much friction as that is possible, the more value that can be created in the world by the creatives and by humanity. And so, you know, the I don't want to get too kind of political here, but I think there does need to be a shift in the way that we think about our economy and participation in our economy, and making sure that, not just AI, right, but automation as a whole is having an impact on, maybe not the average person in our society, but individuals in our society, and will continue to. And as we get better and better at automation, it's going to have more and more effect. And so I think, this is a lot of people talk about regulating AI and kind of its impact on the world. But I think, the other side of it is that we're going to need, now that we're reaching this point of automation and efficiency, we're going to need to update our economic system and kind of how we view, how we view work, and do we live to work or work to live? Where I think traditionally there's been this idea that work is life. And I think that as we get more and more of this automation in place, as we get a tighter feedback loop between an idea and the result, that it will create efficiencies that will improve outcomes for humanity, as long as we don't let that all get vacuumed up by all that value vacuumed up by a few.
I talk a lot about what it means when AI gives you back a half a day to a day per week. And to your point, your
Right.
identity is no longer solely based on your 9 to 5, right? It's based
Right.
on potentially a bunch of other things that make you the best version of human. Do you think as a
Totally.
society, we're prepared to have those really important conversations about what does replace the 20% of our time that hopefully in a positive way will be automated with AI?
Yeah, I think, the the reality is that the strikes are us talking about it, right? Like, the the worst thing that can happen is that this disruption takes place slowly to a few, right? Because then they don't have a sufficient voice to really communicate about it. But I think that getting into a position where the writers are working together to find, what is this next phase of the job? Is it about the idea, or is it about the labor? And I think that the opportunity there is to value the idea and the outcome, independently of, how many hours butts were in seats.
As a technologist with an early front row seat at the LLM table, and doing all the things that you've been doing for a while in and around AI technologies, what are the limitations of the current technology that you think present the biggest impediment to broader adoption and kind of fulfilling the promise of what the technologies will eventually do?
Yeah, I think, this goes back to the conversation of kind of regulation and the impact of the automation, Andrew Ning said that he's not concerned about Evolv AI for the same reason he's not concerned about overpopulation on Mars. Being in this every day, kind of being active in the state of the art, I think now is the time to think about it. Now is the time to prepare for it. But the reality is that we're still early days. There's a lot of limitations of it. The models can do interesting tricks, but in the grand scheme of things, there's still a long way to go to get to reason, to get to agentive AI, to to have it playing a more active role in our lives in society. Right now, they're pretty limited in their ability to connect a problem to a solution, and that I think is going to continue to be the case for the at least the next decade. And so in the grand scheme of things, I think now is definitely the time to talk about it. But when people are thinking about how can I incorporate generative AI into my workflow, whether it be through image generation like Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or Chat GPT or products like ours or Copilot, if you've used these technologies and actually tried to apply them to a big problem, the human is going to be very necessary for for quite some time. Both from getting the right inputs to it, but then also curating the output, because in a lot of cases these things are fire hoses that that somebody has to fill a glass with, and so having really passionate creative people wielding the most powerful paintbrush we've ever created is going to be fantastic, but the paintbrush doesn't operate itself.
Such an important point. The closer you are to the actual technology these days, the more you realize that it is at best capable of being a co-pilot. But let's just be clear, who's driving the plane?
Exactly.
There should be no doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, one of the things that I think about a lot is, as a consumer, I'm becoming more and more accustomed to questioning everything that I see, whether it's a billboard or an ad or a new product offering or a blog post about what the origin of it was and whether or not it was human or machine generated. And it matters to me. It really matters if it was someone that I trust's unique work versus a next word predictor having generated something it seemed like would interest me. What do you think it means in an era where we may not be able to trust what we see or read? Or do we become more cynical, or does the content become better? Or like, what does the world look like when the whole notion of trust is really something that we have to question more than we have in the past?
It's interesting the way that you pose that question. So you sort of you connected disinformation to whether it was created by a human or a machine. And the reality is that disinformation is the standard for for information at scale in our culture and politics already, right? Like if you look at the major news organizations, you look at the dishonesty and data manipulation in scientific papers, like disinformation has been present at scale within our world. There's the old saying, there's three sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth. And that's just a reality, right? One of there's kind of two really powerful aspects of AI that I think can actually help us start to deal with this as a problem. So one is we've already started to use AI to be able to track and identify information and where it came from, who's repeating it, you know, the facts behind it, right? And that just simply wasn't possible 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So the ability to actually identify and communicate when disinformation is occurring is solvable only with AI. The other side of it, which I think is interesting, is that a lot of what drives disinformation is, humanity's lesser instincts, right? Our seeking of resources and power, et cetera. And so the fact that AI isn't motivated with those kind of underlying intentions. So even if you say, to a human, hey, can you go and help distribute this food or investment in this poverty stricken area, right? Humanity's kind of lesser instincts get involved there, and they start to try to play the outcome in their favor, whereas with AI not having that motivation intrinsically, the ability to input good intent and output a more efficient kind of pure version of the solution is again something that isn't really possible when looked at purely through the lens of of us as biological machines. So um I don't think that because it was created by AI, it is disinformation. There's the hallucination aspect of it for sure. But I think that and who created the idea or value is an important aspect, I think, in all works, right? But at the end of the day, I think AI is actually the most powerful tool we have to overcome disinformation, even if AI is used to as a tool for humanity to create more of it.
Do you think that how you perceive or react to, or maybe are influenced by content might be different if you know it's created by a machine versus if you know it's created by a human?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I think that's really related to someone's background or their experience. One thing that I saw with like the early days of Chat GPT and things is that most people bias towards believing it in much the same way that most people bias towards believing what they read on the internet. And so the fact that it was hallucinating and spitting out totally fictitious facts was, I think, eye-opening for a lot of people. But I think that as that gets solved, the cool thing about AI in general is that as these models are used and improved, it's centralizing the corrections, right? And so rather than distributing a fact or piece of information across millions of instances of books and content on the internet and stuff, being able to kind of centralize it and then correct it in place, I think will get your core accuracy up in some of the larger, more meaningful models and knowledge bases. And then you can also track the a specific application of that knowledge back to its original source in a way that's really never been possible. So the potential for it to be more accurate than could ever exist today is, I think, the upside. The downside is that the bias towards trusting it is similar to our bias towards trusting when our friend says that they caught a fish they didn't or something. So we need to always be skeptical, especially when bias or the motivations are in question, whether it comes from AI or humans.
Hey, Tyler, it feels like we're just getting started, but I got to get you off the hot seat. But not before you answer one last question for me. So roll back the clock to when Tyler was the software engineer at Cloudera, just an iconic company, had amazing success there. And in fact, Almer, who is the founder of Cloudera, will be on the podcast in a few weeks. I'd love for our
Awesome.
audience. Yeah, I'll tell him to say hi. I'd
Yeah.
love for our audience to hear from you. What did you learn from that experience as a leader and maybe as a technologist?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think Cloudera was a really formative company for me. One of the things that I've always found is I'm just in awe of how amazing people are and how well intentioned they are. And there were some really amazing kind of driven people at Cloudera that were just trying to have a big impact on the world. And that was exciting for me, you know. As far as my practice as both an entrepreneur and a technologist goes, you know, there are a couple of takeaways that I had from that experience that have continued to drive me in ways. And so you know, one is really there's there's a lot of things that you can do, right? But really, there's not time to do everything. So focus and like really prioritize ruthlessly the stuff that is going to have the biggest impact on somebody's life, and then find the shortest path to the goal, because the shorter the path to the goal, the quicker you can get to hitting the next big impactful thing in people's lives. And then finally, never solving problems for your future self. So when you know, when you're building systems, oftentimes you're thinking about you know, how do I, you know, how is this going to be used in the future? And like you implement a bunch of abstraction layers and like functionality and stuff that you're like, I think that this might be useful at some point. And you know, that wasn't really the practice at Cloudera, and it created huge efficiencies and a huge opportunity to create more good in the world. So you know, those were really the big ones, is hire amazing people that you want to work with, focus on the biggest and kind of best opportunity you have for impact, and do it as cleanly and tightly as you can.
Good advice. And don't design for your future self. I like that one.
Yeah. You'll either you'll either have more money or be out of a job. So don't worry about it.
Hey, Tyler, this has been a lot of fun hanging out. Where can the audience learn more about you and the work of Evolv AI?
Yeah, definitely. Check out our site, evolv.ai. Check us out on social media. We post pretty actively on LinkedIn, and really just getting our Instagram channel up. So you'll be hearing a lot more from us over time, but you can check us out on those channels.
Great. Well, we're all rooting for you and the team to succeed.
Thanks a lot.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from PeopleRain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.